Hi everyone, Dani here, and welcome to another Sunday evening with Edward Rutherfurd's London. If you are new here, I am reading every chapter over, as this is a reread for me, and giving you a chapter summary to enjoy in case you are having a hard time. Sometimes books like these are a little overwhelming to get through. If you have been following along, you know that we are up to chapter 11, which is titled The Globe. So make sure you've hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell. Comment below and like this video. In real time, this should be bringing us right up to the Sunday before Thanksgiving here in 2025. We may possibly do a live discussion the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So be sure to be tuned in if you are interested. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in a live discussion. But if you are watching this in replay, check the description because the full playlist will be at your fingertips. So you can watch in order or just the chapters that you need some help with. So again, this is chapter 11, the globe. The globe meaning a theater. So we are in the time of Shakespeare, kind of the end of Queen Elizabeth's reign, as she was very much into the theater and loved to see the plays. But this is not what our normal theater is like. We, at this time frame, which is at the end of the 1500s, so we're looking at about 1597 to almost 1600. This is about 60 years after our last chapter. The theater is just starting. So we're used to seeing like troops of people, or maybe there are people who are commissioned by noble people or people who have money. They may have like a poet come in and provide entertainment for their guests. We don't really see these theaters like we see today. We don't see Broadway as we see today. So theaters are just starting to come into the limelight, so to speak. Now, with our people, with our characters in this chapter, we have quite a few, as you can imagine, as we have people who are involved with the theater. We have Edmund Meredith. So if you recall from last chapter, we see that new line of people, the Merediths, and we see here Edmund, and he is cousins to the Bulls. So we also see William Bull. He's a little bit older, but he's a cousin to Edmund, so they are well known to each other. Edmund is an aspiring playwright. He really wants to get his writing on the stage, and he will do anything to get there. William is his cousin, and he lends him some money to do so. We also see a young Jane Fleming. She's 15 years old, and she is truly infatuated with Edmund, thinks that she and he are going to end up together in matrimony. Her and her parents work for the playhouses. They do all of like the scenery and the costumes, so they are very much so involved with the playhouse. We also have Cuthbert Carpenter. So we see a carpenter here in this chapter, and as his name provides, he is a carpenter. But he comes from a family that is very much against the playhouses. They believe that it's a sin, it's against religion. He thinks otherwise. He's very much involved. He wants to be part of it. He thinks it's just so amazing. And he has to hide a lot of what he does during the day from his grandmother because she is not happy that he's doing sinning out there in the public. So we also have a John Doggett who is also working with the barges. So in the last chapter we saw, I believe it was Daniel Doggett, who is a bargeman. John Doggett is also a bargeman, and he works with the playwrights as far as just being a friend of Edmund's, and then he gets involved with helping people cross the Thames when the globe is constructed, and we'll get to that. Now, Doggett is interested in Jane. Edmund is interested in Jane, but not completely. She is quite young, but there's a little bit of admiration there. The last character that we're going to discuss is from the Barnacle line, but he's interesting because his name is Orlando Barnacle, and he is a pirate. so a seafarer. He was brought back by his father, who was a barnacle, but he is considered, or is known as in the chapter, as Black Barnacle. So he has a dark complexion, but when his father brings him back, his father says, "He is mine," and he leaves him his legacy, essentially. So he continues to be a seafarer and is then known as a pirate. He comes into London. Ultimately, he is searching for a wife, and we don't know that until the very end of the chapter, and that's when it gets pretty interesting. But he comes in and he's just interested in what he sees, because he does spend most of his life on the open ocean and seeing a lot of the world, really. So when he comes into London, he sees these young people, Edmund Meredith and Carpenter and Doggett, and he's interested in the theater, but they don't treat him very well, as you can imagine. So it's obvious that it's racism for sure, but they make it in jest, like it's all just joking. But those are microaggressions. Those are, as we know in our full, we understand this as we've come through history, as he is not what other people see every day. So it's definitely racism. But he kind of goes away, and the other characters are kind of left with what is happening. So what is happening, right? Playhouses are becoming a thing. However, the government and the churches, the religious sector, don't like it. One, because they feel like it's sinful for some reason. These people pretending to be other people, and often plays had godlike characters or Satan-like characters. You had the government, who did not like being criticized within these theatrical events. And if you know anything about theater or any kind of creativeness, it tends to sway people's attitudes. So we can't be having that in our religious people's mindset. We can't be having that in our political mindset. So there are whole councils that are adverse to the theater, and they try to stop the theater. And all of these fictional characters are trying to make it so that the theater can survive. And there's the, hoity-toity theater, and then there's what they call the curtain, which, like, the chapter opens up, there's a bear fight against, like, really big dogs, which was really sad to see. But anyways, like, you can see, like, you have that, and then you have, like, Romeo and Juliet. So the whole chapter revolves around trying to get the theater to have a play. And ultimately, there's a lot that has to go on. There's really crazy happenings to move the theater that ultimately becomes the Globe, where we know Shakespeare put on many plays in reality. But there's a lot of weird stuff that happens, and Edmund ultimately writes a play, and he remembers this person that he met, and it's this Orlando Barnacle, and he creates a play called The Blackmore. It is not a good description of a person such as Orlando Barnacle, and it just so happens that he comes on that very night to see the play, and it is very, very derogatory and paints him as the villain. And obviously, being a person that doesn't look like everybody else, it's very straightforward racism, and it was just very unfortunate. And Edmund realizes it throughout the play, because he ends up having to play in the play. He has to become an actor for the play, and he realizes his play is not that great once it's on stage. And he does get some audience hissing, but they obviously notice that Barnacle is there as well, so a lot of it is thrown towards him as well. And a few people get a little bit of their comeuppance in the end of this chapter. I don't want to give too much away, because I don't want to give spoilers. Jane ultimately gets taken. We're not going to say by whom, but she gets her happy ending, I guess, in a way. And overall, I didn't feel like the chapter was that interesting. I felt like I was put off in the very beginning because of that bear fight. I really don't like animal cruelty. Not that I put down a book because of it. I just feel like sometimes it's unnecessary. I understand that historically it probably happened, but it's like, oh dang. So that kind of put me off in the beginning of the chapter. And again, I don't know why, but same thing from the last chapter. There was no silver sleeves in this chapter, and I wonder, does silver sleeves really create that much like good scenes, like tension and like cleverness that like we actually do like silver sleeves? We just like to hate him so much that when he's gone, we miss him. And when I say we, I'm referring to me, but do we? I think we might actually like silver sleeves a little bit. So I'm really hoping he's going to be in our next chapter, because all in all, this chapter was kind of like meh for me. So last chapter and this chapter, 2 chapters without silver sleeves, and I wasn't that blown away. Usually I'm pretty excited about a chapter, and the chapters are pretty interesting for me, but in these 2 chapters, not so much. All in all, in this chapter, we just see the hardship that the theaters have trying to get started, how government and religious leaders try to stop what they're doing. We see a little bit of the interest that Queen Elizabeth has in the theater, but more so it's just about how creativeness is kind of tried to be snuffed out, and how the people who want that to become something try to fight against it. But as a reader, it was a meh chapter. So until next week, we have chapter 12, which I believe is titled God's Fire. So I'm interested to see, because I'm having a hard time remembering from my first read which fire this is. So we'll get into that. It is a bit of a heftier chapter. I believe it's just under 100 pages, but pretty darn close. So do take some time. But like I said, all of the chapters are in my playlist. You can check that out in the description. Let me know if you're interested in a live discussion, because then maybe I'll start sending out certain questions and like see what you guys want to talk about during that. And yeah. So until next time, I hope you are reading something fantastic, taking care, staying safe. And as always, you know how it goes. Happy reading. Bye.